The problem with gender-neutral audios is that you can make them very impersonal if they're not done well. If you try to make them sound like a normal sentence that you'd give to anybody else, say if you're talking about 3 people in the same sentence, only for you to use they for all of them, that sentence is just not going to make any sense at all. And so one of the ways that you can get around this, though, is by using other names and other titles or other things besides simply he, she, they, them, etc. I want to actually cover this in How the Cards Fall because I had no idea what kind of gem I was actually going to discover when reviewing or when recording, editing, and now at this point reviewing this audio. I do these little reviews every now and then just to shake things up, at least in my head, so I don't burn out and no longer want to create audio roleplays every now and then. I am still editing audio roleplays on the side too, so I guess I'm not really stopping anything. But for this one in particular, I was so impressed by how deverouxlane here wrote and formed everything in these sentences that I actually didn't even realize, or rather I forgot halfway through that this is still a gender-neutral audio, that being How the Cards Fall. The very first one, I uploaded it late at night and just instinctively wrote M4F until I got a message that said, hey, I noticed that you put M4F. It's actually an M4A audio. And me, because I'm a big brain operating only on 2 brain cells at a time, realized, oh, shoot, you're right. I did make an oopsie. And so went back and corrected that, but it made me review the script one more time. And I was expecting deverouxlane to just simply substitute a word for the listener, rather than referring to the listener as they, them, he, her, I don't know, whatever you want. Instead, I rarely saw them ever say anything in third person about the listener. The only time the characters in question ever address us, the listener, is whenever they make it personal. And they say, you. The biggest problem whenever anybody has to record a gender-neutral audio is always the possibility that it is going to be way too impersonal. Generally speaking, between gender-specific and gender-neutral, your options are as follows. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions along the way. If you make, say, a gender-specific audio, you get a more personalized feel, if done well. Again, these are both going to be examples of if it's done well versus if it's done horribly. But if it's done well, you're going to cast a pretty specific net, we'll say. You're going to pull in an audience that only meets a certain criteria, most of the time. I mean, I know a lot of people that listen to audios that weren't, say, for their specific sex, gender, etc., or even for their demographic. Why? Because some people like good stories. It doesn't matter the package it comes in. So if done well, a gender-specific audio hits a certain target audience right in the feels. It makes it seem more personalized, especially if you start doing things like, in many of my audios, I will actually list out, say, hobbies or favorite interests that I know a lot of people like out there. Things that the listener in question, if it's, say, a domestic bliss audio, a boyfriend roleplay, you name it, I'll say, this character will imply likes music a whole lot or makes their own music. Will imply this character enjoys writing. This one enjoys books, movies, good stories. Maybe they even critique it a little bit. This one's a foodie. This one loves hiking or athleticism. Granted, I'm not going to throw out a giant net that supposedly encompasses everybody. So the downside is that theoretically, you lower or limit your audience with these more specific audios, with the benefit being that those who do fall under that net feel like they just walked into the audio themselves, like they feel that this was made specifically for them. That's theoretically the case. In my experience, I've found that isn't always the case. As said before, most people will listen to audios that don't specifically mention them. Heck, why do you think pregnancy RPs are a thing? Or people who are in a relationship RP when most of us are probably single listening to these. But enough call-outs out there. The benefit of a gender-neutral audio, theoretically speaking, again, is that you cast a wider net, we'll say. I keep using that phrase net. What I mean is you broadcast to more people. More people are going to listen in because it tailors to them, or it doesn't tailor to anybody specifically, you could say, and so this one will draw them in. Well, assuming you do it right, yeah, you could get a wider audience. But there's the possibility, not the guarantee, but the possibility, at least the increased chance, that your gender-neutral audio is not going to be very personalized, because if you speak the same way you would as anybody who is, say, non-binary, or for somebody who is, what am I trying to say? That let's say you took a script off of Reddit that was originally, say, an F4M or an M4F script, and you just crossed out a couple of words and said, nope, this is going to be gender neutral. But then as you go through the script, just thinking to yourself, I'll replace all the he, she's, hers, she, etc. with theys and thems, you might start to find that the sentences do not structure very properly. Back to deverouxlane's audio, to get that personal touch and to maintain, if you want this to be a gender-neutral audio, you need to maintain that personal touch. She maintained it by only having the characters in question refer to us, the listener, as you. We never heard them speak in third person about us, or at least hardly ever. I did find a couple of theys, I believe, near the end of one audio. I might be remembering that wrong. But truth be told, this is how you make a gender-neutral audio. I've tried, I still sometimes dabble in them every now and then, especially if it's a commission that's been submitted. And to me, I find there's a good way to do it and a terrible way. The thing you want to avoid is don't use the word they in the same sentence when referring to different people. I did have an audio commission get submitted to me to one time. Not even a commission, it was just an offer from somebody else. So my commissioners are really good writers from what I've seen over the years. And that's why that's another reason I'm doing these reviews right now. It's just, if you do something right, I think you deserve to have it heard, even if it's for no other reason than just to encourage you on, or for other people to also gain some semblance of inspiration for their own creativity. And I'd say the people who post artwork, music, writing, and everything else in between in my Discord server, for example, show me what they've created. Not even fan art, oftentimes. It's just their own stuff. It's beautiful. I love seeing it. If you're one of these people and you haven't joined a Discord server, go to my community tab on YouTube and join it already. We want to see you there. But moving back to topic before Tangent Man derails this any further, I remember the audio had two different things in it that really were off-putting. An exposition dump right at the beginning, expressed in the form of just the character I was going to play, just monologuing to themselves. I'm sure most people do that at times, think out loud. I've heard some people say that they've done what they call like the talk show host in the mirror. I can perfectly see that. The point I'm trying to make here, though, is that the exposition dump brought in a lot of different characters from multiple sources. In one situation I'm talking about, or the character I was playing in the situation talked about the listener, then talked about the listener's friends, then talked about one of my friends, I think, then talked about the listener's jobs, and then at one point included a sentence after the exposition dump where I think it said something like, do they have any idea what kind of damage they're doing to them? There were 3 people mentioned in that sentence I just barely told you. If it didn't make any sense whatsoever, that was the reason I had to forego doing that script offer. And like I said, it was an offer that somebody found and said, hey, you want to try this script? So I decided to give it a listen. Thankfully, the commissions I've been seeing as of late, like this one, I guarantee these people will probably just say, I'm just a subpar writer. Well, you can do some things very, very right as a subpar writer. Sure, we could probably pick out a bunch of things that you did wrong, but I'm going to leave you to do that because I know that you're probably going to do that in your own writing. So I'm going to go ahead and point out the good writing because I believe if you're, metaphorically speaking, at a cross-section on a road with about 8 different roads pointing in every direction, true, I could metaphorically say, don't go down that road, don't go down that road, and don't go down that road. We've eliminated 3 roads. There's still 5 more that you need to take. Which one are you going to take? Or I could just say, take that road, and take any road that's similar to it that leads in that direction. A general rule that points you in a good direction, and because I don't know what's up ahead, it still leaves room for other people to also offer their 2 cents along the way. Writers, artists, creators, anything else in between. Now, finally, last little bit I loved about How the Cards Fall is the thing was only done in 3 parts. And somehow, some way, even I wanted another couple of parts as the guy who was voicing it. So deverouxlane just nailed the idea, or just nailed the concept of jumping straight to the point. The downside, though, behind getting straight to the point is maybe you don't have enough time to supposedly marinate the meat before you put it on the barbecue. Or, namely, you don't have enough time to enjoy a moment with the characters. From what I can remember, the real moments where we enjoyed time seeing the characters in How the Cards Fall, the two twins, and truly getting both a character development moment, a moment just for us to relax and take in the circumstances. I can only recall one scene right at the beginning of part 2, where we're getting to know Oliver, the younger twin. The twins' names are Darcy and Oliver, just as a reminder. We got the older twin, Darcy, very protective, very stern. I had to use a slightly deeper voice for him. And for Oliver, the younger one, used a bit more of a excited voice for him. Somebody who's just adorable, the precious being you want to protect, you know? And for Oliver, we only got a moment where we truly got to know him at the beginning of the part 2. And then we got to know him again at part 3 after rescuing him. So there's a lot of time in between for just these minor character developments. But from what I've seen in my own experience, both reading books, writing, and over-critiquing beyond necessary, is every scene in every book, movie, TV show, you name it, should do one of 3 things. 1, either establish or further somebody's character development, referring to the character themselves. 2, help us expand upon the world that we're in, meaning it's for immersion's sake, and it usually bounces off these other 2 things. Usually it's a character who's furthering their own character development while interacting with the environment and painting the world that we're in. So you do need to connect it to these other. Or, the third and most important, it furthers the plot. Think of every scene from your favorite book, TV show, movie, etc. You will find abundance of all 3 of these. You'll find that every scene needs to have 1 or 2 of these 3 involved somewhere. If it doesn't have any of these 3, or if you're fighting to find which of those 3 fit into a scene, that's probably when you'll find that most people, critics and viewers, have the biggest issues with them, because it doesn't serve a purpose, and that's probably why they couldn't stay watching it or reading it or listening to it. In the case of deverouxlane, she definitely didn't do any of that. If anything else, we'll put this in massive quotation marks, crime was not giving us enough time to marinate and I'm going to stop saying the word marinate. I just barely cooked some barbecue the other day, and now it's starting to affect me in my own writing and editing process. But why I still also think it kind of worked in her favor a little bit is because viewers and myself kind of want a little bit more. And I'm also going to add, as a content creator myself, sometimes you don't want to create more of a certain product if you didn't plan any more than that. If you didn't plan any more than that, it might hold the same weight as an unplanned Disney sequel. But if you do have a lot of ideas circulating in your head, for me, that was actually The Love of a King audio, this entire story unraveled, which is about to conclude in the next little part next month. All sorts of ideas came forward, and I just thought, let's just condense this into one part. It became the most popular audio on my channel. People clamored for a part 2, and I thought, you know what? All those ideas that I had, maybe they could fit into this next audio. That's when you want to do the sequel. That's when you want to carry the story. It still might seem like part 1 is a little off because it doesn't 100% connect to the others, but in this case, I'm just going to say that deverouxlane probably did more good than, I'm not going to say harm, but I'm going to say something like that. Clearly, she left the people wanting more, which is every writer's job. Again, just to reiterate, I gotta say, this is how you make a gender-neutral audio done well. I've seen an abundance that definitely mean well, but probably want to know how to make these audios a bit more personal, and that's probably how. Refer to the listener as you. What's more personal than that, other than just simply saying your name at that point? But then that falls onto the category of you're making it now too specific and possibly too impersonal. Second thing, get to the point, even if it takes a lot of detail. Heck, I planned on this being just like a 5-minute review, And to my knowledge, I don't think I've really wasted any time or repeated anything I had said before, any past bullet points. I think I've said a different point every time or gave an example. And so far, this audio is coming out to about 10 minutes almost. Sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. That's how the snowball rolls, and that's how the idea turns into a story. Thank you so much for all these commissions that you've all been submitting. For those of you who have a commission but think that it's probably not one that I'd want to read, you should probably send it to me anyway, because I do like to give feedback on whether or not this is something for the channel, and usually say something like, it doesn't fit my brand very well, but I think that you might want to try this VA over here. He loves this kind of stuff. Honestly, though, I'm actually trying to branch out into different genres, so I wouldn't even say that's a pretty decent excuse for not doing an audio. But I wish you all a tremendous day. I'll be releasing new audios, both role plays and more of these reviews every time a story arc ends. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks for listening.